It really is no exaggeration to say that Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a perfect modern fairy tale. Now then, we can quibble about whether or not there is such a thing as a perfect story, and by no means is Puss in Boots, despite how good it is, a perfect story, but that does not mean it can't be a perfect fairy tale. And as I will argue in this video, that's because it utilizes the rule of three to the utmost of its potential, and thereby combines old school fairy tale storytelling with modern storytelling to create an epic that is subverting everyone's expectations and doing gangbusters over at the box office. But not only doing that, it is inspiring and entertaining audiences everywhere and really giving people a ton to chew on. There are so many videos out here on YouTube about why this movie is so good, why this character is so good, why this character arc is so good, why this one plot point is so good, and that is just because this movie combines everything in just wonderful fashion. But I would argue that one of the reasons why everything just pops out so beautifully, like looking at an amazing masterpiece of a painting, is because it has utilized the rule of three so well. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And what I want to do here in this video is not so much look at the specifics of individual characters or character arcs, though I will touch on that here in this video, but I want to analyze how Puss in Boots: The Last Wish utilizes old school fairy tale storytelling in order to make the most of its story. And I think that's really fascinating and interesting right here, because Puss in Boots is part of the overall Shrek franchise, which made its name for itself by poking fun at all of the fairy tales out there and the ways in which companies like Disney have adapted those fairy tales. It was did just an excellent job of just poking them all in the eye, having a really great laugh. And honestly, the Shrek movies, especially Shrek 1 and 2, are movies that just stand out as just these wonderful bits of storytelling and parody and satire. And yet, Puss in Boots is a return to formula in such a way that it actually cuts both traditional storytelling and Shrek at the knees, and then says, here is how you should bring all of that storytelling together to create a brand new masterpiece. Alright, so what is the rule of three that I brought up here at the very beginning? Well, when it comes to fairy tales, there are a lot of specific tropes, or as we would call them, formulas, that are used to create a traditional fairy tale. And there's a whole bunch of them out there, but the rule of three is probably one of the most ancient and one of the most used. And the rule of three exists to create specific comparisons within a story. One of the most obvious ones is what we call the maiden, mother, and crone. And let's use, for example, Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Snow White is obviously the maiden, pure, innocent, good. The mother doesn't have to be a wicked individual, but oftentimes the mother role is presented to be the evil one, especially if it's a stepmother. So the mother then occupies the role of pure evil, and good and evil is always a dynamic that you will find within fairy tales. Then you have the crone. The crone is a roguish figure who can swing either good or evil. And when we look at Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, we have Snow White, who's the pure good one. We have the wicked queen, the stepmother, who's obviously evil. And then we have the crone, the alter ego of the queen, who is obviously evil as she attempts to poison Snow White. Another example of the rule of three are the three challenges that the heroes must go through in order to succeed in something. So, well, again, looking at Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, we have, in the actual story from the Brothers Grimm, there are three challenges that the dwarves must go through to save Snow White. The queen tries to put Snow White into sleeping death 3 separate times. The dwarves are able to save her twice, but the third time they can't save her, and it requires true love's first kiss to wake up Snow White. Another instance of the 3 challenges, and I really actually enjoy this one, is the King's Serpent, where a young boy eats the serpent of the king, can suddenly listen to animals, and he goes through 2 cycles of 3 challenges. The first cycle of 3 challenges is actually a redemption arc for the boy because he has disobeyed the king. So these 3 challenges show that he's actually a good kid by helping out animals using his newfound superpowers. The next challenge of 3 is how he is supposed to win the heart of the princess and then has to rely on the consequences and relationships of his good choices to help him win the heart of the princess. And then, of course, there is another example of 3 characters. Usually when we look at 3 siblings, you will see this in Cinderella. There are 2 wicked stepsisters, and then there is Cinderella. The use of 3 characters is there to help really amplify just how good the good character is. You can say that a character is good, but when we look in comparison to the 2 other characters in the roster, it's clear that those 2 are villains and that this character over here, like Cinderella, is pure and good. So, the rule of 3, it happens all over the place in fairy tales, and it is used to create specific comparisons, so that way you understand one particular character within the overall setting of the plot. Now then, this is going to be very important when we look at Puss in Boots, because Puss in Boots: The Last Wish utilizes the rule of 3 in numerous ways. Now, in order to do this, I am not going to go into great detail about the specifics of the plot for the movie. You should definitely go and check it out for yourself, or you can watch all the other wonderful videos out here on the interwebs breaking down the characters and character arcs for this film. What I will say, though, is this. The movie opens up with Puss being an absolute Chad and hero, saving the people from a problem that he himself creates by taking on this mountain troll, winning in spectacular fashion, but then dying in a really hilarious way as the bell tolls for his end, and Puss comes down now to his last life. He is told he needs to hang up the cape and retire, but no, Puss is a legend. He's not going to retire. Well, death then comes to bring retirement to him. Death is like, you've thrown away your lives frivolously in the past. You're going to do the same right here. I am going to just cut to the chase, and we're going to get this done and over with, and I'm going to humble this legend. Puss goes running, with his tail between his legs, and he goes into hiding. Well then, introduce all these other characters. We are introduced to Perrito, the wonderfully good little chihuahua who wants to be a therapy dog, who tries to help Puss rediscover himself, while Goldilocks and the 3 bears are looking for a cat burglar to help them out with stealing a magical map from Jack Horner, who is a wonderfully evil individual who is trying to find the wishing star at the center of the dark forest. And Kitty Softpaws is also there to try to swipe the map, so we have tons of different people all going after the wishing star, this powerful relic that will give the user one wish, one powerful life-altering, reality-altering wish, and everyone has a reason for going towards it. It is the perfect MacGuffin. And one of the things is this, that this is a MacGuffin that will actually challenge everyone along the way. So you get this really great scene where Puss and Kitty are fighting over who gets the map after stealing the map from Jack Horner, while Goldilocks and 3 bears are trying to steal it from him, and this just engages this crazy race against time and basically Mad Max Fury Road style into these magical woods, which will alter themselves to attack and challenge anyone trying to get to the wishing star. And these various challenges help lead the different characters along on their journey towards the star, where we then get one final confrontation against everyone, and all of the different character arcs are wrapped up beautifully in just a very emotional fight. And let me just say, when I first started watching this movie, I was like, how are you going to balance all of these characters, all of this stuff? There's just too much. The movie makes it work by utilizing the rule of 3. So let's start looking at the rule of 3 as it's used for the heroes. Now then, within the rule of 3, remember the rule of 3 is meant to create comparisons, and specifically to say, for instance, who is the best of the good characters. In this case, it's Perrito. Perrito is easily the best character. He is pure innocence and goodness throughout the entire story. There's not a single bad bone in his body, in his poor little broken body. And that is right out of classic fairy tale storytelling, that you have a perfectly good character who's usually the youngest. In this case, Purrrrrrrfect fits all of that. Purrrrrrrfect is the best of the good characters. You then have Kitty Softpaws, who is after the wishing star for selfish reasons, but ultimately they're good selfish reasons. She wants family. She wants people that she can trust. She wants someone that she can love and not have her heart broken by, as what happened with Puss earlier in their lives together. And then we have Puss in Boots, who is the hero. He's the good guy of this story, but what he is doing is very selfish. He wants to use the great powers of the wishing star to get back his youth. And those are the three characters right there. And so when we look at it, obviously these three are the heroes. The story makes that very, very clear. But we have a kind of an ascension of goodness. We have Puss in Boots, who's the good guy, but he's obviously got a real selfishness issue that he's got to get over. We have Kitty Softpaws, another good guy who is selfish, but not quite as selfish as Puss in Boots. And then we have Purrrrrrfect, who's a good guy who is selfless. We then use the rule of three to have a look over at the villains. And what we have here is actually a very, very interesting lineup. We have Goldilocks and the Three Bears, who are actually very similar to Kitty Softpaws, where, in this case, they are villains, but they are villains with a good goal. They wish to have a family. The bears want to have a family. Goldilocks wants to use the wishing star to get her perfect family. We then have Death. Death is an interesting character to have in this lineup because while he acts the part of a villain, he's more of an antagonist and an antagonistic force hunting Puss. He doesn't need the wish in any kind of way, but he uses the allure of the wish to draw Puss in Boots to him to have his final showdown with Puss. And then we have Jack Horner, who is pure evil. Where Purrrrrrfect is pure evil, Jack Horner is pure evil. He wants the wish to steal all the magic in the world from everyone else and bring it just to him because he is sour that he's just a nursery rhyme while everyone else is this fantastic character with their own fairy tale, their own amazing story. No, he wants all of that, and how is he going to get it? Not by making himself a better person, but by making everyone else worse than him. And so we have the rule of three being used to help differentiate between the villains right here. Who is the worst villain when you put them in a lineup? And it's very clear that Jack Horner is the worst of the villains. Death might be the most terrifying of the villains because of what he represents and how he acts and how he hunts Puss, and I will get to that and how his arc is used in the rule of three as well here in just a moment. But now we have our lineup of three heroes and three villains. This is where yet another rule of three is utilized. The comparison between these various characters. Purrrrrfect and Jack Horner are basically two sides of the same coin of purity. Pure good versus pure evil. And these characters are absolutely needed. You need the precious angelic good boy cinnamon roll, and you need the mustache twirling villain to bring out the vagueness and grayness of the other characters. Normally, fairy tales don't do this. Fairy tales are very black and white. But when you want to bring out the gray area, where you can have some fantastic character interactions, you don't just bring out gray characters to then mix and mingle, but you have pure goodness and pure evil on opposite sides of the spectrum influencing the actions of all the other characters. And believe you me, when you watch the movie, it is incredible what kinds of interactions you get between all of these many characters, because there is Purrrrrfect, who is so good and who tries to motivate everyone to be their best selves, and on the other end you have Jack Horner, who is actively trying to bring out the worst in everyone, as he himself is just self-projecting his own vile personality on everyone and everything. It is absolutely incredible. This is where old school storytelling and modern storytelling have merged to create, honestly, just a perfect blend of character arcs. You then have the second comparison, which is between Goldilocks and Three Bears and Kitty Softpaws. And the thing is that there's actually so much that's similar between them. What makes them different is that Kitty Softpaws has made more good choices in her life than Goldilocks and the Three Bears. They are presented with the exact same problems at the very heart of it all. And what differentiates them between heroes and villains is that the heroes, in this case, Kitty Softpaws, has made the right choice more often than Goldilocks and the Three Bears have. And what gives Goldilocks and Three Bears a real redemption arc, which makes them just so fantastic, is that they then at the end choose the family that they have versus the family that they could have, which is in many ways the right choice. And I'll get more into that later on. And that then actually helps to really bring out a fantastic discussion of whether or not villains can or should be redeemed. And what we see between Jack Horner and Perrito and the Goldilocks and Three Bears and Kitty Softpaws is that in order for a villain to be redeemed, before you even have a discussion of whether or not they can be redeemed, it is, does the villain want to be redeemed? And for Goldilocks and the Three Bears, that's actually what they want. They want redemption. They want happiness. They want family. And that is something that is good. And that's something that when it's finally presented to them, they choose that. Whereas Jack Horner actively chooses wickedness and laughs in Jiminy Cricket's face about, why would you think that I would ever want anything good? I am evil. Oh, it's just, it's so much there. There's so much packed into this movie. I love it. We then get the third and final comparison, which is Puss and Death. And this is really good right here, because at the heart of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is this theme of that youth goes away eventually. You are not immortal. Death comes for us all. And what you have to do is you have to decide how you are going to live your life. And that is where their relationship really comes into play, because rather than a comparison like what we get with Kitty Softpaws and Goldilocks and Three Bears, theirs is a dynamic contrast between each other. Puss trying to live and Death trying to bring death, obviously. And that is the relationship that really pushes the entire plot forward. And it's just, again, it's so good. It is this rule of three coming into play to really bring out all of these characters, their character dynamics, and their character plots. Now then, another instance of the rule of three are the three challenges that the characters must go through in order to get to the wishing star. Once they enter into the dark forest, the map that they have changes according to who holds it. And that's because the forest and the map are going to challenge each person along the way in order to help them realize, well, what do they really actually want to wish for? If we look at the different challenges that come along throughout the journey, each one is there to challenge them to see, are you actually wishing for what you want? The wishing star is actually really brilliant. It's a brilliant MacGuffin. It doesn't just exist to be used. It exists to be used and to challenge the user. Are you sure that this is really the wish that you want? So when we look at the first challenge, Perrito is, once again, he is a pure, good, innocent cinnamon roll. He doesn't need a wish so long as he is happy with the people who are in his life, and he makes that very clear. And so his journey is one that just helps to exemplify that, to confirm his belief. And for the people who don't believe him, such as Kitty Softpaws and Puss in Boots, what happens is that when they go to the first challenge, a pocket full of posies, they have to stop and smell the roses, otherwise the roses beat them up, which I absolutely love. And this is a brilliant message to anyone on this particular journey. Stop and take stock of what you already have in your life. The world is far more vast, far more rich, far more beautiful, far more engaging than we often give it credit for. We live with blinders on every single day, and we're just stuck in our own lives, or we're stuck on the little screen that we've decided to make our lives. But what if we stopped, put that down? What if we stopped, took off our blinders, and saw the world for what it is? There's way more beauty and goodness and love and adventure out there than we give the world credit for. And what if we instead decide to focus on that? How many of our selfish desires would just simply melt away and vanish if we took greater stock and value in the world and the people around us. We might find way more joy and fulfillment. And that's a beautiful message right there. The second challenge, which I find very interesting between Kitty Softpaws and Goldilocks, are actually basically the same thing. It is a regret. It is nostalgia. What if you could have that thing that you actually wanted this entire time, but you didn't realize you already had it? For Kitty Softpaws, what is it that she wants? She wants someone that she can love and trust. It is Puss in Boots. It really is. But she needs to help him to realize that he needs to put away the legend and overcome his selfishness. If she can do that, she already has then what she wants in her life. And for Goldilocks, she doesn't need to wish for a better, perfect family. She already has a family right there. She just needs to work things out with them, and then it can be her perfect family. And that is a phenomenal message. How selfish are we that we don't take, again, stock of then what's in our own personal lives and realize that maybe we're actually way more fulfilled than we give our lives credit for? Do we need to use a wishing star to have something that we already have? Maybe we just need to work on it a little bit more. Maybe we're already way more fulfilled than we realize, and we just need to work on bettering our condition, bettering ourselves, bettering the people already within our lives. And by doing that, yeah, it might be a little bit of hard work, but then we would already have what we greatly desire. The wishing star, through its challenges thus far, is telling the characters, enjoy the world and the people around you, and enjoy what you already have in your life. Work to make it better, and you will already find so much fulfillment. So what's the third challenge? Well, this for Puss is when he goes into the Cave of Lost Souls, and he gets to see all of his lives as they once were, and then he comes to realize, I've been a jerk and an idiot. I've been so selfish and self-centered that I've lost out on everything else. The wishing star, through its third challenge, is telling us and telling the characters, you already have so much goodness in your life. Maybe the thing that you need to work on is fixing those few things that are preventing you from really moving forward and enjoying everything else. There are problems within all of us that we need to work on in order to better ourselves. And maybe, is that what we should wish for? Or do I need magic to fix that? Maybe I need something else non-magical, something way more reliable and real in order to have that happy ending. So the rule of three, through these three challenges, tells us so much about the characters, and especially tells us a lot about Jack Horner, who just crashes his way through everything. He doesn't learn from a single one of these challenges. That's because he doesn't desire to change. He doesn't desire to become better. His wish is completely selfish and evil. And so as a result, he doesn't care about these challenges. He just breaks his way through them to get to the wishing star, sacrificing everyone and everything along the way. And again, that just helps to exemplify just how evil of an individual he actually is. So again, the rule of three is used to just grand effect to tell us so much about these characters. The last use of the rule of three that I really saw in this movie is between Puss and death. With the rule of three right here, Puss has 3 encounters with death. The first encounter is when Puss is just living the high life. He's not going to retire. He has his 9th life. He has cheated death 8 times, and he will do it yet again. Death then comes for him and just owns him, destroys him in all of his glory and pomp, and very nearly kills Puss. And Puss has to absolutely degrade himself by going through the pooper and into the sewage and then fleeing to a cat home and just completely degrading himself in such a way that he's able to disappear from death. And yet, when he's brought back into the game with a chance to use the wishing star to gain back his lives, his youth, and his legendary status, death comes immediately for him again, and death stalks him throughout the story until he has his second showdown with death, which is then in the Cave of Lost Souls, where he reveals himself very much to be, I am death. You have felt it. You have felt it this entire time, but you've rationalized it by saying, I'm just some bounty hunter. But no, I am death, straight up. Puss then, once again, runs from death. He runs from almost all of the lessons that he's learned up until that point because he wants to save his own skin. He has failed twice, and the shame of that failure hits him, and the realization that how he has abandoned these people who love him and people that he himself loves, that he cares about. What was this entire journey for if he just gives it up now to escape by taking other lives, by taking back his lives through the power of the wishing star? Will he make that selfish move and then completely negate all of the growth that he could have? Will he turn his back on the lessons that the journey has taught him? No. Even though he has failed repeatedly, when the chips are finally down, Puss makes the correct choice when facing death for the third time and decides that he will fight for the one life that he has. He will not use the power of the wishing star to save himself, but he will confront death as a mature adult, and he will live or die. And he then has that fantastic showdown with death, which allows him then to utilize the information and the items that he's gained throughout this journey in order to stave off death for just a little while longer and prove that he can and has changed. Now then, I have heard and read that a lot of people complaining that Puss shouldn't have beaten death in this particular fight. Well, this is a kid's story. The kids need to see their hero winning. So Puss has to beat death. But Puss then himself admits, I can't beat you. And for the adults in the audience watching this, they should realize death has been present throughout this entire movie, chasing against Puss. Puss can't beat death. Death will always be there. So Puss, by defeating death, has shown that he has grown, that he has become the individual that he needs to be, but then he accepts, I can't beat you, and I won't always be able to run from you. So instead, I will live the life that I have, and when the time comes that you really do come to collect my soul, I will be ready at that moment. And death accepts that, which is something that we ourselves should be able to accept. And in many ways, this kind of reminds me of the fairy tale from Beetle the Bard about the three brothers, which then leads to the legend of the Elder Wand from Harry Potter. However, this story does it so much better, or that by actually diving into the minutia, diving into the detail of how a character gets to that point where they're no longer running from death, but can accept death, and by so doing, can accept to live the life that they have to its utmost potential and fullest. And so, as we see right here, by utilizing the rule of three, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish takes old school fairy tale storytelling tropes, utilizes them to the absolute utmost to help show us, the audience, who all these characters are, what are their adventures, why does it matter, and helps to communicate the deeper themes of the overall story. Any classic fairy tale does not go into depth like this. This goes well beyond what Disney has done with any of its fairy tale retellings. This goes beyond way more than any other fairy tale reimagining ever has that I have come across. And in that way, it actually stays true to the spirit of Shrek, which says, hey look, this is how you guys tell your stories. No, ma, to forget that, we're going to tell a story like this. And in a way, it acts still as a parody by outshining all the other classic fairy tale retellings that are out there by telling a very deep, grounded, amazing, engaging, entertaining, and emotional story by using classic fairy tale tropes and blending them together with the nuance and power of modern storytelling. This is why Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a perfect modern fairy tale. Whew, so that will do it for my gushing right here. Let me know what your thoughts are on Puss in Boots if you have watched it. If you haven't watched it, I'm sorry, I definitely spoiled quite a bit for you, but trust you me, it is incredible to watch. So I really, really want to hear what your thoughts are. Once you've seen the movie, or if you have seen it, tell me what you think about my analysis of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And if you would like to support us here at Camille's Harem, please feel free to like, subscribe. Also, check out the stories that we have published. Links for all of that and more are in the description below. We would love to have your support. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this amazing adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.